Welcome to Live from My Office, sponsored by Team Hochberg, David Hochberg, 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. And as always, we thank them for the support. Well, here we are. But, honestly, the president's having a rough go of it. And to be sympathetic, as I've never been with him, but, I do understand in some ways. It's been a rough few days. It was way ahead on election night. Then he was way behind a few days later. Now, does that mean that there was fraudulent voting? No. What it means is Donald Trump, as always, is his own worst enemy. Trump went out of his way to tell people mail-in voting was fraudulent, even though he and Melania absentee voted all the time. Same postal service, by the way. And by doing that, he drove Republican voters away from early voting and mail-in voting. And frankly, he drove a lot of people away from voting for him at all. Now, he still racked up 71 million votes. That's a lot, but not enough when Joe Biden got 75 or 76. Those final vote counts are yet to be counted. But the reason Trump lost is because the mail-in votes and all of the pre-election day votes, in almost all cases, weren't counted until after Election Day, and the majority of the Election Day total was counted first. That's why Trump went up, and that's why Biden passed him a few days later, ultimately ending up with what we saw on Saturday, and Saturday was when the race was called. He planned on a press conference in Philadelphia Saturday morning. Now, again, this is 3-4 days after the election. And he wanted to claim that he won Pennsylvania. But here's the problem. The Pennsylvania state government got wind of it. They ran the numbers and said, there's no way he can catch up. CNN and others called it, including Fox, for Biden, and did that before Trump could lie and claim he won. Imagine the shitstorm he could have created if he went out and did a press conference claiming he won when it's a complete lie. So the Pennsylvania state government gets wind that he's going to announce that he won Pennsylvania and cause all sorts of problems. So he announces on Twitter there's going to be a press conference at 11:30 Saturday morning in Philadelphia at the Four Seasons. Here's the problem. His staff somehow book the wrong Four Seasons, not the Four Seasons Hotel. They book Four Seasons Total Landscaping in some sort of industrial park in Philadelphia around the corner from an adult bookshop. You can't make it up. By now, you've probably seen the pictures. So Trump, after this gets all blown up and he can't do what he wants to do, lie, he sends Rudy Giuliani to lie for him instead. Giuliani brings up as one of the first people an alleged poll watcher. This alleged poll watcher is notorious in New Jersey, next door from Philadelphia, for running for office constantly. And oh, by the way, he's a registered sex offender. So let's review what we know so far. First up, Trump lied about the vote, tamped down his own vote, and lost. And there's no way he can catch up. 2, planned on a press conference, got busted before he could lie about the vote totals in Pennsylvania, and then has Rudy Giuliani, his lawyer, go in and do a press conference with a known sex offender. You would think that'd be enough. But oh no, there's more. Trump set up a voter fraud hotline. This voter fraud hotline number got out all over social media. There was laughing. There was mocking. At one point, the Hamburglar claimed to call. And the key really was you didn't want to hear, well, have you ever watched The Price is Right? It's not good.
Trump National War Room.
Hundreds of calls came in playing the loser sound from The Price is Right. Again, I'm not defending Donald Trump, but I understand why he's in a bad mood. Now, again, nobody says Trump can catch up. He's completely wasting time, and it's more than just a time waste. It's absolutely dangerous because what he's doing is delaying the transition, even though President-elect Biden was very measured, very calm, and said, we're pressing ahead. Sure, it'd be easier if we didn't have to do it this way, but we're doing it anyway. Mitch McConnell, shocking that he didn't have more courage. As a matter of fact, you may have seen this, but I tweeted out at Cochran Show that the only recount Mitch McConnell needs is to find out if he still has 2 testicles. So we know Trump can't catch up. We know he can't make up the votes he needs to make up to catch him past Biden. So why? Why is he prolonging this? Is it about the power? Yeah, of course it is. Is it about the plane? Nah, he's got his own plane. It doesn't have all the cool stuff that Air Force One has, but, it's got a gold toilet. Is it about the limousine? No, he's been in plenty of limos. Is it about going to jail? Bingo. No more calls. We have a winner. Donald Trump is still subject to tax evasion and fraud charges with the Southern District of New York. And even if one of these conspiracies, the theories comes true where Mike Pence would take over for Trump, Trump would resign, and a deal where Mike Pence would then pardon him, it doesn't get him out of the charges that the SDNY can bring forward. So yeah, he's in a bad way. Yeah, he's angry, but it's not going to change. A lifetime of bad behavior has finally caught up with Donald Trump. And the worst thing that could happen is that he won the presidency, because before that, he was just a pain in the ass in New York. The people in New York knew that he was full of it. The people in New York and around the country knew on some level that he was a blowhard at least. But now everybody in the world knows the real Donald Trump. And the longer he waits to go away, the more it's going to be hard for him to live outside of jail or as an inmate. Will anybody get to him? Melania supposedly has talked to him. Jared Ivanka have supposedly talked to him. He's still got some people in his inner circle like Mark Meadows who are allegedly telling him we got to fight on. But the fight's over. And the longer he waits to get out, the worse it is for the democracy that he swore an oath to protect. Now, there's a greater concern, too, which we'll pick up on another episode of Live from My Office, and that is when he leaves office, because he could be anywhere between $400 million and $1 billion in debt, owing money to who knows. Would he sell secrets as an ex-president? I mean, these all sound like 24 plots or something even more outlandish. Scripts that never would have been able to be sold, but we've seen the last 4 years, and it seems like a legitimate concern. So today on Live from My Office, two of our regular guests, one who knows Joe Biden very well, the other who knows politics better than just about anybody. One's a confirmed Democrat for life, the other's a confirmed Republican for life, but a Republican who has never supported Donald Trump and is certainly not going to start now. Pat Brady and Mark Doyle join me in just a moment. Stand by for that, and thank you for listening to Live from My Office. Live from My Office, presented by Team Hochberg, your trusted local lender. Look, David Hochberg is loud. David Hochberg is emotional. David Hochberg has a passion for helping you and helping me. How do I know that? Because he did. We did a home equity loan on our home, and he did the home equity loan because I trust him. That's the thing. All those years on the radio, I wasn't just talking about products. I was talking about products I spent money on or that I put faith in people on. And there's nobody I have more faith in than David Hochberg. I recommended that my daughter work with David Hochberg. He did. He got her mortgage for her first home, and she's thrilled and had a great experience. My sister just did her second home refi with David Hochberg. Look, he's good, and so is his team. And it's important that you know that you need somebody more knowledgeable, but also somebody that actually really cares about your outcome. And the local loan officer at the bank, I'm sure he's a swell guy, but that's not the same deal. Nor is Bob's House of Mortgages down the road. You need somebody that's the best in the business, and that's David Hochberg. Call him up at 855-56-DAVID. Go to 56david.com. You can refinance to pay off debt. You can do a reverse mortgage and find out all about reverse mortgages. Who are you going to call? Tom Selleck at his house? He's memorizing a script. He doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's bigger than I am, and he could probably still kill me with his bare hands, so don't tell him I said that. It's Team Hochberg, David Hochberg. I trust him. You can too. Whether you're purchasing a new home or just need help figuring out your money, you need Team Hochberg and David Hochberg. Let me give you the contact again. It's 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. Well, it's crazy days, and I am pleased. I'm thrilled to be able to say hi again to my friend Mark Doyle. Mark Doyle, you know the name from Rags of Honor and Veterans Roasters, and we'll obviously plug that. But Mark Doyle is too modest to tell you what a big role he and his organization, Unite the Country, played in electing Joe Biden. So welcome. And in these first few hours and days after Biden wins the presidency and becomes a president-elect, I want to ask you a few things. Are you prepared?
Am I prepared?
Are you prepared? Are you prepared? Are you prepared right now? Do you need counsel?
I definitely need counsel. I'm never prepared, and I always need counsel. Let me just say that.
Let me go back first, because we've talked about this in the other times that you've been on live from my office. But I want to remind people where the Biden campaign was and how close this came to not happening without the help of South Carolina Senator Jim Clyburn and what Clyburn has come to say about Unite the Country. So let's start there.
As anybody who paid close enough attention to this knows, that my friend Biden had a horrible show and got smoked in Iowa, got smoked in New Hampshire, and the campaign had always maintained that if they could make it through South Carolina, where they felt very confident, because you would have an electorate that looked more like America, black and brown and white, as opposed to just a specific all-white voting base in Iowa and New Hampshire, that they would be able to prevail. The problem that they had is, because the Biden campaign just wasn't good at raising money, and Biden himself has never been a prodigious fundraiser because he's never needed to, going into South Carolina, really Nevada the week before, and South Carolina, they are first to admit it, they were broke, couldn't even afford yard signs. So we were the super PAC, the only super PAC supporting Biden in the primary, and I joined the super PAC specifically because I knew at some point he would have two fights he was going to fight. A general election fight against Trump, who was worried about taking him on, and then the primary fight, and nobody can fight two of those at the same time. So a week out, 5 days before Nevada, after he'd just been smoked out of the first two contests, I raised $1 million from our friends at the IBEW, who were strong believers and had already endorsed, to help with Hispanic radio in Nevada, where we took second, take the rest of it down, and we taped the piece with Congressman Jim Clyburn, and we aired the piece statewide because the campaign had no money, and the rest, as they say in history, Biden won literally every county in South Carolina.
Why is Clyburn so important in South Carolina for people that don't live in South Carolina? And I haven't lived there since 1985, but he is the number one political figure in the state, isn't he?
He is. He's really the dean of politics in the state. He's been a congressman, I think, for 36 or 38 years. He is a man of tremendous faith. I think his father was a minister. And he has built a lifetime of goodwill in that state and really represented, for all the voters, but especially black and brown and women, a voice that Biden would listen to. And, Biden has been fighting civil rights fights for 35, 36 years since he's been in the Senate. And he's always been a friend of Jim Clyburn. And he's come down for the last 25 years, every time Jim Clyburn needed him to help raise money for the campaign. And so he has just been the dean of South Carolina politics and really the most trusted politician in the state.
So politics is timing, and I have heard, and you can verify if you know the answer to this, that Clyburn didn't want to get involved until the timing was right. Is there any truth in that?
There is. He did, and he tells the story of sitting on a park bench outside a church, an elderly African-American woman who said, "Who are you going to support?" And she said to him, "You can whisper in my ear if you want." And he hadn't endorsed yet, but he knew he was going to vote. He always knew he was going to vote for Joe Biden because he considered him a friend and he considered him the best candidate at the time, but obviously before that to be president of the United States. So he leaned over and he whispered in her ear. She snapped her head back. She said, "Oh, hallelujah." And he said, Clyburn said, "I knew when I saw that reaction that I needed to be vocal about my support for Joe Biden because that's where the electorate was. That's where the people who voted for me are." And that really would push him to say, I'm going to be vocal about it, and we're going to go out and do it. And again, they didn't have any money even to get the word out. And this is not a knock on the campaign. They were doing their best. But the woman who worked for me on the Super PAC was his chief of staff in the state for many, many years. She went to him and said, we've got some money. We need to tape your piece. And we went over and shot it at his house and then put it on digital, put it on TV 4 days before Election Day.
And is the reason it works so well is because you make him comfortable in that environment, you sit him down and you ask him to speak from the heart as opposed to reading a script?
Yeah, well, I don't think we had a script, and he didn't need one. And I don't know if you saw his endorsement. I
did.
Okay. I'm an Irishman, so I cry a lot. I had tears in my eyes as he talked about his wife, how his wife loved Joe Biden so much. Now his wife said, you need to support Joe Biden. And his wife had just recently passed away. And Joe Biden has had deep history down there in South Carolina. And it didn't take much for people to understand that he understood them. And they just needed to hear from the dean, the people, the guy they trust the most out of South Carolina.
I tell you what I find interesting, too, is that, we live in a time where people say endorsements don't work. And I think generally they don't matter as much. But when you have somebody as embedded and as authoritative in all the positive ways as Clyburn is in South Carolina, it's no wonder he moved the state because most politicians couldn't do that.
And I'll tell you, there were many people who wondered if he could do it. I will tell you that there were local politicians and statewide elected politicians, in my understanding, who were waiting to see if he still had the juice, that if he could still move the electorate. Because if he didn't, I think some people were going to move on him. And we come to find out that not only does he still have the juice, but you can't make people vote for somebody. They don't do it in the unions anymore. Those days of just straight punch are over. You can't just tell people who they're going to vote for anymore. Those days are over. So they needed the validation and the permission slip to vote for Biden, but they wanted to vote for Biden. And he absolutely underscored the fact that, yes, there are some times where where it really does matter. And his endorsement was possibly, arguably the greatest political endorsement of all time. Seriously.
Yeah.
Biden was broke. If he came in second or third, he got outspent 60-1 in South Carolina.
6-0.
6-0-1 by Bloomberg and Steyer.
That's just crazy. So yeah. South Carolina goes, the rest of the country goes fairly quickly after that. But in the meantime, the effort to have enough money for Biden to compete on a national ticket as opposed to in South Carolina goes on. And I would assume you guys had to raise more money at that point at Unite the Country. Is that true?
It is. We would have done it anyway because we had a feeling, certainly after he won South Carolina, and you saw a tsunami into the rest of Super Tuesday. For instance, Biden spent a total of $200,000 in Virginia, did not even have a field office. Bloomberg spent $25 million.
Wow.
He won it by 25 points.
Biden. Right.
And so once Super Tuesday happened, I was actually at a dinner with a bunch of labor leaders, and I called it specifically on that night in D.C. This was pre-COVID, because I had a feeling we were going to do well, and we did. And so we were off to the races. So after that, the campaign had no trouble raising money. Remember, he had 14 candidates in the race.
Right.
And Biden had traditionally, even though he'd been the sitting vice president, it's just not his strong suit. He doesn't like to ask people for money. He never did when he was senator. He never raised more than he needed. He rarely even did any TV. His billboards when he was running every 6 years just a big white billboard with a blue Joe in Delaware. So the money came in, but one of the things we thought that we were worried about as a super PAC is that, having studied what had happened in 2016 with the other super PAC that had supported Hillary Clinton, is that there was an inordinate amount of money spent on anti-Trump media. And we were doing focus groups, and we were getting reactions from people that were the polar opposite of that. And so our decision early on, driven by data, was always to be pro-Biden, because we saw the numbers move when we told the Biden story as opposed to an anti-Trump message. And we knew that he was going to have to win back the upper Midwest and, get back Pennsylvania and Michigan and Wisconsin. And so that's where we focused our fire. And so we ended up, after we raised about $22 million going into Super Tuesday and another $28, $30 million coming out of it through the end of the campaign.
So people hear these numbers, and the numbers for the Senate race in Georgia, which are just gigantic,
staggering.
And everybody says, well, and I believe this is true, and I think you do as well, there's too much money involved in running for office. There is. However, you have to work with the system that you're currently able to use and utilize. So I have a sense that you have two views on this as far as super PACs go. They're a necessity now, but they're not great in the big picture for politics, are they?
I'm of one mind on this. I guess I'm of two minds, to your point. They're a necessity now because everybody has one. It's like if you're in war and the other guy have a big cannon, you need to have a cannon.
Right.
And so they are necessity because everybody has one. What I would say is, if you want to take the money out of politics, there is one very clear path to do it, which you will never see, we will never see. Make TV time free. 80% of every budget for every campaign these days is media, especially if you live in California.
Right.
It's too big to campaign. You're not going to drive around the state. You want to take all the money out of politics? You'd have to. The Supreme Court is not likely to make that change. They're uber conservative. Okay, so go the other extreme. Every campaign come up with a number. 3 hours of free TV time. You can use it whenever you want. 60 seconds, 30 seconds, 1 minute. But that you don't have to pay for media ever again. You do that, you take $1 billion to $2 to maybe $3 billion a cycle out of the market. But the networks aren't going to push for that, because that's where they make all their money, every 2 years and then every 4 years. And the other thing I would say is that if of the $100 million that Jamie Harrison raised, which was ridiculous, to lose by 10 points, he could have raised $30 million and still lost by 10 points.
Right.
A large portion of it came in low dollar. Bernie Sanders is an excellent example of a guy who did not have a super PAC. He raised $700 million in $25 increments. So it depends on where the money comes from. If this is the great thing, it's the most democratic way is if everybody can give whatever they can give, and teachers can give 25 because they could believe in somebody, then there's nothing wrong with that. Where it went off the rails, in my view, is Citizens United. And for those people who are listening who don't know what that is, it was a U.S. Supreme Court case that essentially said that corporations are now people and they can act like people and at unlimited amounts of money. And it was, it was a real downfall for politics in the sense that I think this cycle, $12 billion was spent.
Well, is there an opportunity with Joe Biden in the White House? And by the way, we still don't know which way the Senate's going to end up. Is there an opportunity whether the Senate goes Democrat or not to bring back some sort of form of McCain-Feingold and at least start fixing this?
If anybody would do it, it would be him. I don't know how much time we have, but I could tell you a hysterical true story about the first time 35 years ago, no more than that, Biden tried to get a campaign finance bill out of committee as a freshman senator. Joe Biden's a freshman senator. He gets elected. He's 29, turns 30 before he's sworn in. He's 32 years old, been there 2 years. He's the most junior guy on John Stennis, who is from the South, on his committee. Biden, so that was 72. So 1974, he's a freshman senator. And back then, the chairman of the committee was all powerful and rarely spoke, but freshmen didn't speak up. You waited your turn. You only spoke when you were spoken to, and deals were just cut. It was the old rules of the Senate. Biden wanted to lean into this, and so he's at permission to speak. They give him the microphone. He gives an impassioned 4-minute speech about too much money in politics, really too many special interests. We should really think of a way to limit the amount of money that politics that goes through the whole thing. Sits back down. John Stennis has leaned back in his chair the whole time. Leans forward. He said back then he used to have a cigar in his mouth. Leans forward, pulls his microphone up to him and said, "Mr. Biden, I believe you're the youngest senator ever elected. Is that right?" And Biden said, "Actually, I was the 4th youngest, but I was too scared to say it." So I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You ever want to be the youngest ex-senator to give a speech like that? You try that one more time." And that was it.
And that was way before C-SPAN and way before news networks where that would become a story. But that's
the end of campaign finance. So if that is to say that if there was ever anybody who understands the need for campaign finance, it's this guy.
So
Biden. And so there might be a shot. If McCain was alive, there'd definitely be a shot. With Lindsey Graham, there is no shot. With Mitch McConnell, there is no shot. None. They won't do it.
Let me ask you a question that's a little unfair, I suppose, but it goes to the spirituality of the president-elect. I know how good a friend he was of John McCain, and if you have a story about that, feel free to share. But with all of the literal life and death that Joe Biden has gone through with the people he loves the most, do you think he spends any time over the last week thinking about John McCain and, you know, what McCain and he might do if they were still together?
I'm sure he thought about a couple of people in his life along the route that took him here. And one is John McCain. And Cindy McCain endorsed. She taped a piece for the campaign, and she taped a piece for Unite the Country for us, in which she said, if John were alive, I know he'd want Joe to be president if he couldn't be. And Joe Biden and his wife introduced John to Cindy McCain and set them up.
Didn't know that.
And that's Jill Biden. John McCain was the naval attaché attached to Biden when he was a freshman senator, and McCain had just been discharged, and so they traveled together. And as Biden said, McCain once said, "I carried his bag," and Biden snapped back, "No, you were supposed to carry my bag." But they were fast friends, and they were at an event, and John McCain had been divorced, and Cindy was there, and Jill and Joe were there, and Jill said, "You ought to go say hello to her." And John McCain did, and he said, "I'm going to set it up." So Jill went over and set it up, and that's how I met Cindy. And they go that far back. And what we know from Cindy, about a year ago, she said, what people don't know about Biden is in the last several months of John's life, he just quietly got on a plane and went out to see him.
And multiple times.
Multiple times. And then, of course, he gave one of the 2 eulogies was Joe Biden to John McCain. So it is likely he's thinking about John McCain, who, when John was running in 2008 and Biden was about to announce, they were still in the U.S. Senate. McCain walked up to him. I may have told this on your show. And he sees him on the Senate floor. He puts his hand down. He says, "Joe, I want to make a deal." Puts his hand out. And Biden says, "I'm not making any deal with you. Shaking on any deal to you. Tell me what it is," right? They're friends.
Right.
Said, "Here's the deal. If lightning strikes and we both get our nominations, I want us to fly on the same plane to every debate and get off the plane together and walk into that hall together." And Biden shook his head and said, you have a deal, my friend.
Can you imagine?
That was John McCain.
I mean, can you imagine? And by the way, the McCain speech after he conceded to Obama has gotten a lot of play in the last few days, and rightfully so. It's one of the great speeches ever given. A lot of attention was paid to McCain shutting down, I'll call her biased, not a heckler, but a woman who had some very narrow-minded views about Barack Obama, but much more so than that. His concession speech is just moving and appropriate, and one of the great speeches ever given. It's juxtaposed against a guy like Trump. It's one's a man, the other isn't, and so on. But let me ask you about somebody else that troubles me, and it's somebody that I know Biden found a way to get along with and work with, and it looks like it's going to have to be the same now. Assuming Republicans retain control of the Senate, Mitch McConnell will still be in control of the Senate. He's got a stack of bills he never even dealt with on his desk that's taller than I am. And what sort of breakthrough could Joe Biden make based on their longstanding relationship to get some work done for people?
Judging by their history, I am cautiously optimistic. I will say that when Biden was the vice president and they were in a protracted negotiation over the cut in government versus the tax cut, and they were going back and forth. They ultimately got there, but they got there because of the following. McConnell called down to the White House and said, there's only one person I'm going to talk to. Send Biden or don't send anybody else. And that's how they got the deal. They have history together. There's two men who were they really were friends in the Senate at one point. McConnell has obviously done what he's done. He has a base that he has to appease, and he's done it the best way he saw possible. He is. We'll see if he has any honor left, and I mean that. I really mean that. If he has honor left after what he's been through with this president for 4 years, there's a possibility that Biden can sit down and say, "We have to work together. You have to control your caucus. I'll control my caucus." But we're going to have 50 million people out of work. We're going to have 300,000 people get this virus. We don't have a Defense Production Act fully funded yet. We have some work to do.
You're much more charitable about McConnell than I am. Trust issues aside, what he did with Merrick Garland, his self-centered notion of putting judges in place as his legacy, which in the big picture, service to America by, you talk about stacking the courts from here to there with judges that the American Bar Association says aren't even qualified.
Yeah.
I mean, all of that to me is unforgivable. But Biden has been doing this for a long time, and my sense is, and again, I don't, unforgivable in the past doesn't mean he can't work with him now. Is that the way he might say
That's right. Biden is never in it for himself. That's the difference, in my view, between he and every other politician. I mean this. I hope your listeners understand how important a statement that is. He is never in it for himself. He is always in it for the good of the country. Always. The entire country. Not just a narrow few who care about judges. That is why he's president today. Because I believe people looked at him and said, we believe that. This guy really is in it for us. Whether you voted for him or not.
I'm asking you questions that are unfair, but because of your personal relationship, you can at least speculate on them, and I appreciate you doing that. Yeah. And things can change. But there is a faction of the Democrat Party that is far, far, farther left than Joe Biden has been in his career, and certainly is now for the greater good of the country. Will he be able to count on Nancy Pelosi in the House and be able to control that? You know, as you well know, being a lifetime Democrat, the Democrats do a really good job of eating their own at the worst possible times. So how does Biden handle that, and what's your measure of confidence that he'll be able to?
You need to look no further, in my view, than the midterms. Biden campaigned for 23 moderate Democrats, 22-1. And Nancy Pelosi won back the House because she won in moderate districts. Nancy Pelosi, lover or hater, when they needed every vote for the Affordable Care Act, the story goes, she said, "You're all going to vote for it, and I don't want to hear one peep when you leave this." And there was no drama. They went down there, and they were all yays. So he won't have a problem with her. She understands how to pass legislation, and she understands she can read polls where the country is. 70 million voted for Donald Trump. Now, a large percentage of those people, unfortunately, believe so much of what he said for 4 years that I think we're going to have to unpack all of that and hopefully reason with some of them. But the Democratic Party is a diverse party, and I've talked about it when we raised money during our time as a super PAC. They're very monolithic in the Republican Party. Drill, baby, drill. We really don't think the environment, they really don't believe there's a thing as global warming. They just don't believe it. And they care about judges and tax cuts. I'm not saying that's not it's not an indictment, it's an observation. You just follow the track, the arc of what they care about. That's what they care about. The Democratic Party cares about job creation, but they do think it should be within the framework of a global economy, trying to not burn the planet down. And so alternative energy and how to change from a fossil fuel base. And so you have a very diverse party. And you have to, if you're Biden and you are Nancy Pelosi, you have to find the things within the, quote, progressive wing of the party that are things that everybody could agree on. Like, for instance, you may not know this. You may know this. I didn't. Do you know that right now there are more people working in the wind and solar industry than there are in the oil and gas industry? Did you know that?
I did not know that, no.
Yeah. There are more people employed making wind turbines and solar panels than there are working in oil fields. So that ship has sailed. Now what we have to do is be able to message it and take what people think was this crazy progressive message and say, understand something. We're not driving this. The market's driving this. So some of it is about messaging. If anybody can do it, Biden can do it. And certainly Nancy Pelosi's been able, I think. You can't control people. They're elected by, a constituency. So they have a right to have an opinion. But he's going to have to thread the needle, but I think he can do it.
Last question before I jump to what I always like to put you through, and that's a plug for two organizations you founded, loved, and have broken your back financially, Rags and Roasters. But before we get to that, people, I thought, and again, we're recording this on Sunday, November 8th. The previous night, the 7th, is when the world watched Vice President-elect Kamala Harris and President-elect Biden give two what I felt were just amazing speeches. I thought it gave people a lot of confidence in Kamala Harris, who really hadn't had that much exposure to her. I thought she was terrific, and I thought he was terrific as well. Now, he is a 77-year-old man. When he ran out from backstage, my primary thought was, oh, my God, don't fall and break a hip. And yet, and you've told me he's in phenomenal shape, and he can run circles around guys my age. So what is your level of confidence that he's going to be able to put up with the daily stressors in this 24/7, 365 job of being president of the United States?
That's not even a question for me, knowing what he's been through. Remember that it was 4 years ago, but he was the sitting vice president while his son was dying of brain cancer. You think that's a little bit of pressure?
Yeah, of course.
So, unfortunately, we lost Bo. But the one thing he doesn't have to worry about every day is Bo going to die today?
Right.
Oh, and by the way, I'm still the sitting vice president. I have to travel the globe. So there is no question that this guy's mental acuity, his physical acuity are up to the challenge. And that is the last thing anybody who voted for him or anybody who didn't vote for him should worry about.
And maybe in my case, I was just worried about it because I knew that if he and I were backstage and started together, he would have beaten me to the microphone. So
last summer at the parade up, he ran the entire he jogged the parade.
Right. No, he's
high-fiving people.
He's amazing. It really is. We're in good hands, and
we are.
What we can do is all we can do, and we can't do much about the guy that still has the job until he doesn't. So if you're like me, you'll say a few prayers. You'll try to encourage others to be positive. But I believe that Biden and Harris are on their way to showing the country this is not anything different than what he campaigned on again and again. He's the president-elect for all of us, not just for the people that voted for him. And that is a huge deal. I've been complaining about it for years, not just with Trump. I mean, I thought Obama had wide swaths of where he was too far a Democrat than a Republican. Certainly Bush did. And all presidents do that occasionally. But I don't know. I just think it's a fantastic core message, and I think he's going to deliver on it.
And it is, again, I agree with you. And I agree with you because it isn't something he will have to change who he is to do. It's who he's always been. He has always gotten along with Republicans. Bob Doyle and he were good friends. Lindsey Graham and he were good friends. Lindsey Graham 2 years ago was given an interview about Joe Biden and he was crying during the interview.
Right.
So this is just who he is. He is, and he said one of the first things he learned in the Senate is when you're going into what are going to be tough negotiations, the very first thing you do is find one thing that you can agree on. Find that one thing and start there. And it seems so rudimentary, but it's really good advice. When you're at opposite ends of the extreme on this, you got to start somewhere where you can both agree on one thing. And then that builds a little bit of trust. And he has spent a lifetime doing it. He's passed more pieces of major legislation than any other senator in history, 72 pieces that he's authored. So he's pretty good at it.
Well, I know how much he means to you personally, and how much you mean to him. Is I always say you're the other Biden son. So I hope when you talk to him, you'll express, what I believe he knows to be true, and that's that he gave us an awful lot of comfort and to take care of himself as he goes forward because we need him. And boy, I tell you, I've never felt better about the right man for the right job right now. I don't know anybody else that would be more perfect to try to get us out of all that we're in 2020 than President-elect Joe Biden. So God bless him.
Amen to that. Amen.
If I want to buy a T-shirt or a hat or a sweatshirt of the highest quality, or possibly a COVID mask from the great people at Rags of Honor, where the money goes to support veterans who have fallen on hard times, turning their lives around, as you have done for so many of those veterans now. What do I need to do, Mark? How do I do that?
I'm so glad you asked. I think really all you need to do is go to ragsofhonor.us or masksofhonor.us, and you can get yourself an American-made, printed by a veteran hoodie, long sleeve, mask. It's as many as you want, actually. That's a great thing about us. We'll make as many as you want.
And was I seeing things when I was in a Walmart the other day and saw a display of the same?
Oh, boy. Thank you for reminding all of our listeners. Yes, Walmart has been a tremendous partner for us. And we were pivoted from T-shirts. We were doing a bunch of T-shirts for them. And when the COVID came, we just pivoted to masks. And they put us in about 3,000 stores nationwide. I think they bought almost 5 million masks from us.
It's tremendous.
And it helped us put a lot of people back to work and keep people upright and on their feet and in their apartments. So, yeah, you can find them at almost any, in a listening area here, you'll find a Walmart, or you can go to masksofhonor.us and we'll send you one.
And it's been a real break for me because I thought you might want me to break out my loom that I keep at the house and start working that. And, I'm not as good as I used to be.
Well, I didn't mean if you got a little extra time, it wouldn't be the worst thing. But look, you're busy, so don't worry about it.
And coffee, the same business plan, if you will, the same idea. Let's help veterans with Veterans Roasters. Great coffee, man. Everybody that talks about it, I admit I'm not a coffee guy, but everyone else on the planet is. Can you go to the same website for that, or where do you send folks for Veterans Roasters?
VeteranRoasters.com, and we deliver, and we have been, thankfully, we have seen so many people who can't buy it at the store, just go online, as all of us are learning to live with. But we have decaf, we have K-Cups, dark roast. Our night ops is tremendous. A medium roast, light roast, coffee mugs, T-shirts. And again, the message, we had 9 veterans working for us over there before COVID hit. And, the more we sell, the more people go back to work. So, veteranroasters.com.
That's veteranroasters.com.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you, Steve. And thanks to all your listeners.
Live from my office would not be possible without the help of great partners like Team Hochberg and specifically David Hochberg. I've known David for a long time. Some people think that I may have bailed him out of prison at some point. No, it wasn't me. But David Hochberg's had a very interesting career as well. He's done a lot of different things, been successful at all of them, but I think this is the niche. Because for many, many years now, he's been helping listeners get the most out of their homes, whether it's a financing of a new home, a refi, helping out with something like a reverse mortgage. Look, he knows the money stuff that you and I and most people glaze over about. Now, how do I know that? Well, because I use David Hochberg. I've used him before. I'd use him again. He helped me with a refi of a home equity loan. In addition to that, he's working with my daughter on a refi of her first home. And my sister's used him twice. Good enough for my family, you bet. And my friends, too, like John DeCoste. And by the way, a million other people who worked with me at WGN. Just about everybody there at one point or another consulted David Hochberg for help in regards to maximizing the value of their home and maximizing their money, because he knows this stuff. And don't lose sight of the fact that your credit could be enhanced by one of the Hochberg team members. He's got a guy who is so good, he can take you from the front of the limo to the back of the limo in short order with some tricks and tips that are perfectly legal that you would never know about and I would never know about. But again, this individual is part of Team Hochberg. It's David Hochberg, Team Hochberg, making the most of your money, making you feel better, and taking some of that pressure off, the weight of it when you think, look at this monthly payment, especially now in COVID year. So take advantage of David Hochberg. Make sure you pick up the phone. Go to Team Hochberg's website. That's 56david.com. Or you can call him up, 855-56-DAVID. David Hochberg, 855-56-DAVID or 56david.com. We continue. I'm live from my office with my friend Pat Brady. Hi, Pat.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, I'm pretty good. But you know how I feel about this weekend. I don't know if I ever made it clear, Pat. Never a big fan of Donald Trump. So I like the way this has worked out, even though it's not over yet.
It's over. It's over.
It is.
The only one that's acting like it's not over is Donald Trump, and Donald Trump knows it's over, but he's got to play this game and try to delegitimize it. So when he walks out of the White House, he can say that it was stolen from him. Say that the rest of his life.
Well, that'll be good for him on his TV career, wherever he ends up on TV, which is, in all likelihood, the next step. You were a prosecutor for a long time, and I know that this is not something you've done a deep dive on, but is there anything legally we don't know about that he may try to pull?
I don't know what he's going to try to pull. I know just enough about election law to know that there are minimum requirements on how close the vote has to be before you get an automatic recount, or you can even get a recount. And he's outside the margin on most of that in the 4 states that matter. But I think the best analysis I heard was Pennsylvania, where they seem to be making all the allegations of fraud. Rick Santorum, the former Pennsylvania senator, hardly an anti-Trumper, a real Trump supporter, very conservative guy, CNN commentator, said yesterday he went through all the county numbers, and he knows the state better than anybody, and he said in the areas that Trump is alleging fraud, Trump is actually doing better than he did in 2016. So either the Biden alleged vote stealers are the stupidest vote stealers in the world.
So wait, I want to make sure
there's no basis to the claims.
I want to make sure I understand this. You're saying the areas from 2016 that Trump did well, he's not doing as well?
No, he's doing better. And
he's doing better, and he wants a recount.
Yeah, so he's alleging fraud. I go, yeah, idiot. The Biden people, they're stealing votes. They're stealing them for Trump. It's just idiotic.
So everything I've heard about recounts too, and you were the head of the Republican Party in Illinois. You probably had a couple, I would guess, but recounts don't change the vote much. Generally speaking, pretty good at counting the votes the first time. Is that true?
Yeah, and it's actually better than it used to be. The recounts I did were back with the old different kind of ballots. Now it's all electronic or mostly electronic. So the recounts are super accurate. Even I think it was Scott Walker, I heard, the former Wisconsin governor, saying if you're not within a handful of votes, a recount's not going to do much. And the margins in these 4 states, including Pennsylvania, are in the tens of thousands. So the recount doesn't go anywhere. Now, I think they're just taking a different tack. There's another track of recourse for whomever is alleging fraud, but you allege fraud, you have to put somewhere in the complaint what the fraud's all about. And watching Rudy Giuliani yesterday, it was just a bunch of flailing. So, the courthouse door is always open. You can always file stuff, but that doesn't mean it's not going to get dismissed.
By the way, this will tell you something about Donald Trump's weekend, and I don't know how well he played golf, but along with losing the presidency and having his voter fraud hotline get blown up last night with crank calls over and over and over again, he also had some genius on his staff book the Four Seasons in Philadelphia incorrectly. And in case you missed it, they ended up at Four Seasons Total Gardening in an industrial strip somewhere in Philadelphia in a back lot that looked like where they did the dance scene from West Side Story.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't make it up.
I was reading that. I was laughing. I was bent over laughing. But to think about it, you're out playing golf and you're, hey, nice putt. Oh, hey, by the way, you just lost presidency.
Again, you can't make it up. All right. So where do we go from here? He goes to court tomorrow. He doesn't begin to understand and hasn't tried to understand the job. He doesn't know how cases get to the Supreme Court. He thinks if he says something, it magically happens. He tried to put ultra-conservative judges on the court so they would do everything he wanted. They, of course, have a responsibility to handle the cases on a case-by-case basis. And I've never been one of these folks that says if they are a conservative judge, they're absolutely going to vote conservative. They have they have a charter that they need to follow, and their careers and their integrity matter. So how does he get something to the Supreme Court, and what would it do if he did?
One quick point, when you say conservative justice, there's a difference between a political conservative like me, who has a healthy distrust of government, and a conservative jurist, which means someone that takes more of a literal interpretation of the Constitution, and they apply that as cases come before them. So if they get a case, and it has to be a case that has to do with federal constitutional law before the Supreme Court will hear it. And remember, the Supreme Court hears very, very, very few cases relative to the number that are filed. But even if they can get there, it doesn't mean that the president's going to prevail. And it's still a long shot you can get there.
So you don't see any avenue to get to the Supreme Court where there'd be some by the number 6-3 vote of Republican leaning judges versus jurists versus the other side. That's not going to happen.
Well, you talk to people from 20 years ago, they say that was a political vote. And I don't even really remember what the issue was, but I can't imagine it would be 6-3, just a totally partisan vote. You said it in the intro. These people are appointed for life. They don't know anybody anything. So they're going to do what they believe the law should be, how it should be applied, consistent with their judicial philosophy. So, yeah, I guess it could happen that way, but I don't think that they're all necessarily that partisan.
So where then, or I should say, what then is the motive for Trump? Just to extend this out as long as possible so he looks to the base like he fought it and then he can do what you said, claim it was always stolen from him?
Yeah, he will, for the rest of his life, claim that this election was stolen from him. And this legal process he has to go through, alleging fraud, and he will say to his dying day, I didn't lose that election. It was stolen from me. It's all. it's completely consistent with everything we've seen from him in the last 5 years. And I guarantee that's what the thought process is.
And we should say, for people that aren't aware, there is absolutely nothing that happened after Election Day that doesn't happen in every election, outside of the fact that there was a mountain of mail-in votes that didn't exist at that number in the past. And these votes, absentee, military votes that come in, provisional ballots, all that, and mail-in votes, that happens every election.
Yeah, when I was party chairman, we had a big issue with Democrats trying not to count absentee votes because they were coming in after the 14 days. And we went to bat for the military personnel to make sure that these things were counted, because if you're sending it from Abu Dhabi or Kabul or something like that, sometimes it takes a while to get here. And Trump's now saying, don't count those votes, but he was actually counting votes in Arizona. It helped him.
You're right. Only count the ones that say Trump.
I count the ones that help me. Yeah, don't. Yeah, it's absurd. It's so bad for the country. It makes us look ridiculous. Makes the Republican Party look ridiculous. And frankly, I think it makes Trump look ridiculous. He's got to protect his brand. And at some point, he's going to realize that this is not good for him to be the cranky old guy ignoring normal protocols and processes and filing these ridiculous lawsuits. They're all going to get blown out of court. So I don't know. I don't think he's doing the country himself much good.
Do you think that the primary thought for him is the Southern District of New York, and I've got to do whatever I can to Hail Mary and try to keep the job so I don't get indicted?
I'm sure that's part of the thought process. I think that he knows, in the things I've read in the last day, he knows well and good that he lost the election. It's over. He knows that. But he's just running it out to create as much of a smokescreen as he can. And I think he knows that when he gets out, he's going to now be fair game for whatever the Southern District of New York is going to do, or the Manhattan DA.
And again, we should state that if, and this is not just a conspiracy theory, this is being said by a lot of people, and I don't disagree with a good chunk of this, and that is that there's no way he will sit on the steps of the Capitol on January 20th and watch Joe Biden take the oath to be the president. He won't do that.
He's already said he won't, didn't he?
He has said it, but I mean, there's nothing that's going to change there. So the common sense, or I should say one of the theories, it's not necessarily common sense, is that he's going to resign. Mike Pence will have to ride it out, and there'll be some pardon deal, but that pardon deal doesn't get him out of trouble.
No, and that's something I'm not sure that Pence would agree to. I know that's the kind of a theory, but I'm not sure if that would ever go down. I'm not sure if people would go for that. I don't know if Mike Pence would go for that.
Yeah, I mean, as much as he has attached himself to Donald Trump like a barnacle, regardless of what Trump has said, I guess everybody has their line.
Yeah, and Pence being the way he was with Trump, that's what a lot of people think that job's all about, being vice president. In Pence's mind, maybe he thinks he's doing exactly what he should have been doing. But I don't think it goes as far as pardoning the president.
So we get through tomorrow, and then we've got in this week, and then we've got 70 days of more of this, or eventually it calms down. Where would you put your money right now?
Well, we've got to get through these dates for finalizing the election and having the electors actually go and vote, which I think goes into December. So those are the opportunities, the certification of the vote day dates, and then the date that the electors actually cast their ballots. And those are the two dates coming up that he can create a stink, and maybe there's these ongoing lawsuits the whole way through. But I don't think he goes out quietly. I think he goes out screaming. I just don't know what he's going to do. But none of it's good for the country. It's all about him.
And there's a lot of noise being made about Trump and Republican leaders trying to affect the votes of electors who historically in the past haven't done it, even in 2016 when it looked like they certainly had a reason to. and electors going the other way and not voting for Biden. I mean, that seems to me the smallest chance of any of this.
Yeah, and I do believe, I think in like 33 states you can't do it. You have to vote the way you're supposed to. But yeah, that's disturbing that he would encourage Republican elected officials to, talk to the electors and not cast their votes the right way. I mean, the idiocy spreads to Illinois. I saw our national committee woman, Demetra DeMonte, who represents the Illinois Republican Party at the national level, put out an idiotic press release yesterday with just a bunch of garbage in it about we're going to win this election, listen to all these things that make no sense. So there are people that are still going along with Trump and going along with his ball game, and it's all bad for the Republican Party.
I spoke with Dr. Kevin Most, who, is the longtime medical advisor for me on the radio and has been on this podcast a million times doing the same. We're in a COVID world of hurt like you can't believe. As we record this, tomorrow, Monday, the 9th, Biden's going to name a team of scientists that he wants to be part of a task force to attack this and other things. But that isn't going to happen until after he's sworn in. Does any of this make Trump come around with COVID?
Why would he? He hasn't done it before. From what I understand, or at least what I've read, the COVID task force hasn't met in a couple months anyway. And Trump hasn't engaged at all, particularly since he got it and says, so he got it, he thinks he's immune. So he doesn't care. So no, I don't think anything's going to change in that regard. I mean, he hasn't. The bad thing is, or the sad thing is, or the stupid thing, had he handled this at all like a president, like an Obama or a Reagan or a Bush, either the Bushes or Clinton, he could have had a 90% approval rating right now.
Oh, he would have. He would have won in a landslide against anybody. He could have handled it like Millard Fillmore, and it would have been a win for him. But he denied it existed. He turned his afternoon briefings when we needed to hear from the scientists and Dr. Fauci into the Trump show. He couldn't have been more incompetent, and that's why people. And you never quantify this, but a lot of people have died because of how bad a job he's done.
It did cost him the election. You're seeing a lot of articles now and chatter post-mortem on the Trump loss about how in January he had the re-election almost sewn up. He had really good numbers everywhere. And then the coronavirus hits, and he never wanted to acknowledge it. He never wanted to do anything about it. He actually hid it from us. He says because he didn't want to panic, but the reality is he didn't want to have a bad campaign issue. And then the second thing he did is dumping the whole thing down to the individual governors, so there's no comprehensive, coherent strategy coming from the federal government. There were many things he did that just seemed idiotic, but just the fact that he relinquished the role of commander-in-chief, which is console the country, show some empathy, tell people you understand. You would think after he had it, he would have come out and said, boy, this is bad. Everybody needs to get treatment. And versus, I'm Superman. He looked like super dope. He also looked like he was absolutely out of breath. He was making that speech on the portico.
When he was doing his Evita Peron thing up on the top.
Oh, God. You could see how labored his breathing.
Right, and a normal person would say, I could have died from this, but instead, not only did he not, he continued down the path of it's no big deal, and even went so far as to say doctors are getting rich off this. I mean, he's just a horrible person.
And just not to say, man, this is really bad. I'm going to do everything I can as your president to make sure that nobody goes through this. That's not even some super slick politician. That's just a natural response for somebody that's supposedly in a leadership position. But it's just he's never respected the job, the institutions, or the people in this country.
Right.
Ever.
Right.
And you know what? Now he's done, and he's not getting reelected, and he's done. He's a one-term president, and he's a loser.
So where's your head at going forward between now and January 20th? Are you confident we're going to be okay, or just prepare for the shitstorm that still is coming, or where are you?
On COVID or general?
In general.
Well, my theory is this. Even the Kardashians got canceled, right? So we've been watching this reality show, President, for 5 years now. And I think at a certain point, I think maybe yesterday it happened, at least the sense that I got, actually kind of my own feeling on this right when I saw the race get called was just a sense of relief, and he's just not race relevant anymore. So he certainly has all the powers of the presidency, but I don't think the public's going to engage as much because they know he's gone.
So let's talk about the state of Illinois quickly and the city of Chicago before we run out of time. Last time you and I talked, you brought up the problems that Madigan's having, and in all likelihood, he won't be speaker. What else do we need to know in the days following, since we've last talked and since Election Day, about where the state of Illinois is and will be when session starts in January?
It's really an amazing election, a surprising election. All of us were prepared for Illinois Republicans to just get pummeled. It'd be a bloodbath, but just go from the top down. Yeah, Governor Pritzker's big initiative, the quote-unquote fair tax, got creamed. Not just beat, got creamed. And that, to me, indicates that the people in the state just don't have an appetite for a tax increase. Justice Kilbride, first Supreme Court justice ever not to be retained, and that was because of the campaign against him, tied him directly, Justice Kilbride, tied him directly to Mike Madigan. Like, this is Madigan's favorite judge. Kilbride, come on. Huge development. Jim Durkin, the Illinois House Republicans, thought they were going to lose 8 to 10 seats. They ended up netting two pickup. So all across the state, Rodney Davis, who was one of the targets of the Democrats, Rodney Davis, a downstate Republican congressman, beat his opponent by 10 points in a race he won 2 years ago by 1,200 votes. He won it by 30,000. That's almost 30,000. Sherry Bustos, very high-ranking Democratic congressman from the northwest part of the state, barely beat a woman that's never run for office before. So it was really, all in all, like a great night for Republicans, and it sets up very nicely for 2022 because Republicans typically do very well in the midterm of a president of the opposite party. So I think Illinois Republicans have a lot to look forward to. Now, Mike Madigan, not so much. He raised tens of millions of dollars, had nothing to show for it, lost those key races, and there's a lot of grumblings down there that the people, the Democrats that have to vote him in as speaker aren't going to do it. And the people I talk to say they're not going to, but we will wait and see.
So what happens with the fair tax vote that Pritzker wanted badly and got creamed on? That money's got to come from somewhere. So what happens?
Well, you're right, because in the budget, he factored that in the revenue from that fair tax, quote-unquote fair tax, going to balance the budget, which is a constitutional requirement. So now we got a budget hole, and we got another budget battle coming up. But the message there is the Democrats aren't going to support a tax increase, right? They know how politically toxic it is. So the governor's, like he says, he has to make some drastic cuts. So it's all going to be on him. We saw this with Rauner. I don't think Governor Pritzker realizes this, but he's going to wear the jacket on all this. And the Republicans are actually in a pretty good spot, I think, when the Democrats want to do these things. Okay, if you want to get a tax increase or do whatever, we're not doing anything. We're not putting any votes on it until you give us pension reform and redistricting reform and some of the other reforms that Republicans have been trying to get done for a long time. So Governor Pritzker had a really bad night, and it's really not setting up well for him this coming legislative session. He's got to make some real hard choices, and it's going to be very difficult.
And I talked to our friend Bridget Gaynor, and by the way, happy birthday to her. She just had a birthday. And
happy birthday, Bridget.
And Cook County certainly in better shape than the city, but what about the city? Not exactly flush with money. And to me, there's been way too much attention paid on making the mayor a character and building her up as some sort of, I don't know what, as opposed to just saying, let's get the job done. I'm not saying she's not trying, but to try to make her the centerpiece of some feel-good campaign or whatever they're trying to do. It just doesn't feel like it's working when the city's broke.
Well, not only is the city broke, but the city shut down.
Right.
I have only been downtown 3 times since March 17th, and the times I've been down there, it's kind of a ghost town. I mean, it's better now than it was a couple months ago, but the governor has shut the restaurants down. And now he's talking about maybe going back on a total lockdown. The city of Chicago, you need most of the businesses, I understand it, in the city of Chicago is tourism and hotels and restaurants, and it is shut down. One of the things that I think contributed to the Republicans doing so well, because I do believe there was a big momentum shift in the last 10 days before the election, people are fed up with the shutdowns. Right or wrong, people are fed up with it, and it so cripples the city of Chicago. It's really going to be difficult to pull out of this, and now we probably will have a Republican Senate. And I think it's going to be difficult for the governor to get any stimulus money to go for the things that he wants paid for as far as municipal governments.
Well, and I can tell you the best way to keep the state from not being shut down is to social distance and wear a mask for the umpteenth time. It's not that hard, and it doesn't have to last forever, but it's going to last longer, and more jobs are going to be lost, and more politicians are going to have to say we have to shut this down again if we don't do it. Because you look at the map of the country, we've been looking at maps for days. The map of the country for COVID is red coast to coast.
Yeah, I for a couple things. This is the first time that it appears to me anyway, that the governor seems like he's losing the grip on his goodwill on COVID. It seems that there's a revolt from people that are just fed up with it, particularly in the burbs, on shutting down the restaurants. And maybe it's because he didn't articulate why the restaurants are shut down, but the Lowe's and the grocery stores and everything else are open. So he's in a really bad spot. You might get a revolt if they try to shut down again. I just think people are going to ignore it.
It's Pat Brady, and do you have any good news for us?
Great news. Donald Trump's not going to be president anymore. I'm back to being a full-throated Republican. I don't have to. I have not enjoyed the last 4 years of trashing or criticizing the Republican leader, the leader of my party. And now this guy's gone. I don't have to do that anymore. I'm just relieved. I think a lot of people are relieved. And I think watching this election go down and watching this guy, young Joe Biden, poor kid from Scranton, and the first woman of color occupy the second most powerful job in the world. I mean, it says a lot about the promise of America and that you can do anything you want if you put your mind to it. And that, to me, is very refreshing, especially against the backdrop of 4 years of Donald Trump. But you know what? Donald Trump got 70+ million votes. Joe Biden's got his work cut out for him to bring some of those people along that didn't vote for him.
And that's what he says he'll make an effort to do, and I believe he'll try.
I think he is the one person in Congress, as it turned out, who is uniquely qualified to do just that.
Yep, I agree 100%. 4.5 years ago, maybe right around this, I think it was more in the vein of the summer after he announced, so it was probably the summer of 15, on the Steve Cochran show, you announced that he will not win in 2016. And if he did, you would, if I remember the bet correctly, you would buy someone drinks at Trump Tower in the bar. Now, the good news for you is COVID wouldn't let you go in the bar now anyway, let alone with the fact that they probably have a poster with your face on it. They wouldn't let you in and wouldn't let me in. But where does that bet stand? Do you now have to go back and tell somebody they have to buy you drinks because this time you lost?
Well, let's go back. My original thing was guess the date that Donald Trump drops out of the race. Oops, that didn't work. He actually got the nomination.
That was it.
And then the next bet was buy him big drinks that I don't remember what the exact bet was if he won. And he did win. But, nobody ever took me up on that. I think that is more a reflection of people generally don't like me or want to be around me.
Well, I as far as you know, I don't think that's true. Yeah. It's Pat Brady. Thanks for being on Live from my office.
All right. Thanks, Steve.
Every episode of Live from my office has a charitable mention of charities that I know and have promoted in the past, or charities you've told me about. Or possibly charities that I just know about, support privately, that I think you ought to know as well. If you have a charity you want me to know about, please send me an email at thecochranshow@gmail.com. This time around, I want to talk to you about the crisis text line. People are, I don't want to use a technical term here, but people are freaking out. You've got COVID. You've got this insane election and post-election period. You got a president who you don't know if he's holed up in the Oval Office with a whole lot of Taco Bell and the remote for Fox News. If people are struggling, they need a place to turn. And sometimes talking to somebody in person is enough to keep people from doing it. So we live in a text world. How about the crisis text line? It's at crisistextline.org. You simply text HOME to 741-741. You'll connect with a crisis counselor then, and you'll be able to talk from anywhere in the world to a live trained crisis counselor. They'll receive your text. They'll respond in text, all from a secure online platform. You can do it anonymously. The crisis counselor is going to help you move from the incredible stress that you're under at that moment to less stress, so you'll be able to deal with the election or with coronavirus or just general anxiety, emotional abuse, depression. Whatever is troubling you, the crisis text line wants you to know they're there for you and they want to help. It's crisistextline.org. Again, crisistextline.org. And of course, they need your help. You can donate right at the website. You can volunteer as well. You could talk about partnerships. But you need to do it. 741-741 is the text number if you need them. And if you want to donate or help in any way or just sniff around and find out more, crisistextline.org. Well, that about does it with a election-filled. I know you think you've had enough of it, but I like to think we bring a different perspective on it. My perspective and that of people who I respect. So we're going to get through this. We're going to get through this together. And we're going to come back on Friday and give you another episode of Live from My Office, which you can get all of them, every one we've done at CochranShow.com. Check out that website, CochranShow.com, and get all the episodes of Live from My Office. Of course, you can subscribe anywhere. You can subscribe at Spotify and Stitcher. Spreaker is a good place. Tune in, iHeart, wherever you get podcasts. Just do me a favor and leave a comment there and subscribe so you never miss an episode. I want to thank Pat Brady and Mark Doyle. They will be back. And, of course, Ross Cochran, the brains and the talent of the operation for making sure this gets put together now 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Again, we're back on Friday, and you can see me on social media in the meantime, anytime, at Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn, all at Cochran Show, or on Instagram at Steve Cochran Show. Thanks for listening to Live from My Office.
30 years plus on the airwaves, you have turned your dial to me. Now you're tuned into my podcast. It's Live from My Office, Steve. From Ithaca, New York, to Carolina South, W. Cochran Steve. From Minneapolis and then Chicago twice, top-rated shows achieved. Sit back, relax, and now listen to my show. When or wherever you are, 'cause you're on the go. A-list celebs with some laughs and great info. Live from my office, the Steve Cochran Podcast Show. Yeah. No better place to be. Yeah. Subscribe and like for free. Yeah. Live from my office, Steve. So glad you're with me. It's Live from my office, Steve.
Thank you for listening to Live from My Office, a service of Monkey Run Productions. All rights reserved. The podcast is hosted by Steve Cochran, and it's mixed, edited, and produced by me, Ross Cochran. Support the show by subscribing wherever you're listening and by telling your friends about it. Follow Steve on all social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. And make sure you check out this episode's show notes for relevant information discussed during the conversations. You can also email the show directly at thecochranshow@gmail.com with any questions or comments, and that's the best place to tell us about your favorite nonprofit so we can make sure we mention them on the next episode. Steve is available for corporate speaking gigs. He would love to MC your event, and occasionally, he's funny. Thank you for listening. Head to CochranShow.com for more.